But the word is social justice, and we see that being thrown around somewhat from time to time. And so I just had a definition here. Let's see where it. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that because I found that really interesting. So I went to the National Association of Social Workers website, and it says social work is a practical profession aimed at helping people address their problems and matching them with the resources they need to lead healthy and productive lives. Beneath this practically lies a strong value system that can be summarized in two words: social justice. Social justice is the view that everyone deserves equal economic, political, and social rights and opportunities. Social workers aim to open the doors of access and opportunity for everyone, particularly those in the greatest need. Now, to most of us here, and I hope to everyone, we understand that the Constitution basically guarantees equal opportunity and equal enforcement for the law. Lady Justice is blind for that very reason. But our Constitution already guarantees us equal opportunity. Sure, you're going to have some individuals that don't like some other individuals and they cause them some grief and things like that. But as far as our government's concerned, you already have the right to equal opportunity. So I just found this interesting because they're trying to basically take people and say, okay, we don't think you have equal opportunity, or we don't think you have equal outcome, is really what social justice is about. It's political, it's economic, it's social. It's an attempt to weigh the scales on the side of the person that they're trying to help. It's saying that guy that started a company 30 years ago from scratch with $10 in his pocket and an old beat-up pickup truck, and built it to where he has $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year of income and has 10, 15, 25 employees working for him. Somehow he got that unfairly, okay? And so is there I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but is there another political economic system that claims it wants to make everything equal for everybody? Okay, I think we all figured that out. So this is, if you look at it in that light, in that definition, this is just a very kind way of trying to convince you that it's okay for progressivism, for socialism, for communism, that's okay in this country. And it's not. This country was not founded on those principles. And we need to be very careful about letting those things into our country and letting those ideas and philosophies infiltrate our thinking. You have a country where you have equal opportunity. If you choose not to go after an opportunity, that's entirely your choice. If you choose to go after an opportunity and you fail, that again is your choice and your right to do. And so that just really speaks volumes to me when a crowd like this can hear that definition and can make that comparison to countries that try to say that they're for equal, making everything equal results for everybody. And what is it that Rush Limbaugh says about that? He goes, when you have equal outcome for everybody, everybody's equally miserable. Because you can never really give, if everybody had $1 million lifestyle, then there would be no difference, would there? So we wouldn't know what was success and what was not, and what was a better lifestyle than others, because there would be no difference. So $1 million lifestyle would just be like a $10,000 lifestyle or a $2 lifestyle. There would just be no difference. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Lisa. Where'd she go?
I'm here. I thought we were skipping between the segments.
And so she's going to talk a little bit more about communism, has a PowerPoint to go through some things and just some definition and things like that.
Okay. What he is addressing is what Trevor Loudon is going to be addressing next week. We are promoting this because what we're seeing are the signs of communism. And so, being the teacher I am, and that's my job in the 912 project, I believe in educating. And it's been, what, how many years since we had a big communist revolution in the world? Anybody? Anybody believe it's recently? That is what Trevor Loudon is going to deal with. Do you realize that there are actually a Communist Party meeting in Salem? Okay? I want to review some of the precepts of communism, see if this rings a bell, because we are in the middle of that communist revolution right now. Okay? So, why is it important that we know this? So that we are ready. It's not revolution anymore, it's almost evolution. We're being nudged into it. And so, we have to be aware of it and fight it again. Slightly differently, but again. Okay? All right. Communists believe that they are the peak of economic evolution. And that practically it's inevitable. We're going to have communism. It's the next step after socialism and communism and Nazism, all these isms. But once you get to communism, it's the peak. This is the best things can get. Unfortunately, they believe you have to force it. Okay, next. They actually believe that the workers, the people who work for others, are the ones that are being abused. The people who employ them at the second level, they just get to eat. There's people who will kill them. There's people that have fooled them. And there's people that rule them. But only the workers are the worthy people. They believe that. Now, I work for someone. I work for the Clackamas County school districts. And personally, I don't feel abused. But I also don't feel like I'm sustaining everybody above me. They're trying to point out to me, the worker bee, that I'm being abused. Okay? Next one. And they want us all to rally. That's why the Workers of the World Unite was a big theme. But do you see any rallies happening? Trying to get people who are on one side, the abused side, to rally against the 1%? This is from China, Mao. But do you see a little bit of Occupy there? Okay, next one. Gee, communism's engine is class warfare, making you feel you are abused. This picture is from the Communist Revolution. This one is from the American Revolution. Unfortunately, the second one. Okay? Are we the 99%? How many of you feel like you're abused? By your boss? By the government, maybe, but not by your boss. Well, that's just it. They're saying if you're not one of those wealthy Wall Streeters, you're being abused. Okay? They also believe that private property is the root of all evil. If you own things, you must be using them to hurt others. Okay? Yeah, if you're 3 and you steal the cake at the birthday party, that's one thing. But they're saying that anybody who's rich must have stolen it. Okay? They abused religion. By nature, the opiate of the masses. It's meant there to, religion is just to control the people, keep them nice and quiet. But you'll notice that they always got rid of it. This is from the Russian era. This is 2 months ago. Atheism is the new classy thing. Okay? Intellectuals, the people that went to Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge and Columbia are the ones that think it through, but the workers are the symbols. And you notice what they're saying? Workers of the world unite, defend women and migrants and youth. This also is from Occupy Wall Street. That's the signs they're toting around. Okay? Next one. Now, you've heard redistribute the wealth. They have a different idea of how wealth is created. They believe there's a limited supply. You can't make more wealth. And so a limited supply can be equalized. Everybody gets the same amount, and then we're satisfied. Everybody's equal. The problem is they don't understand how the free market works. That if I make money, I'm not stealing it from someone else. I'm creating an opportunity for more money. I can employ others, and they can get rich, and they can get rich enough to employ others, etc., etc. They don't believe the pie gets any bigger. Your slice of the pie is not going to get any wider, but the pie itself getting bigger, means that everybody gets richer at the same time. They don't believe in the pie. Okay? They also believe that because it's an evolution, it needs to grow. A tree has to get bigger as it grows, okay? And so it has to spread out, and it needs more space. This is an American Communist Party poster. American. And you see the words they have there? This way to progress. In other words, evolution. We have to change in order to be good. And so they force that change until we have the next one. Oh, I skipped one. Sorry, my bad. They also don't want to actually talk about policies and ideals and principles. And so they do a lot of work with images. Anybody heard of hope and change? Anybody ever heard it defined? Okay, he never defined it because it's just a slogan that makes people feel good and will rally the people. And he managed to get elected with it. He never spoke about what was actually going on, and as a result, he was doing just what the Communist Party did a long time ago and is still doing. They try to not actually explain how they're going to do it. They just say, red can do it. Hope and change, without an actual concept behind it. Thank you. But because of this, it must be forced on us for our own good. How many of you brush your teeth without being forced? Wow, for your own good. You're willing to do something good for yourself without being forced? Then why aren't we willing to become communists without being forced? It's good for us, isn't it? According to them. It's poisonous. Yes, exactly. We all remember this young man. He was being forced to renew his communist principles. If you have to be forced, maybe it's not good for you. Okay? Next one. Another thing is the results of communism. I think a lot of us have forgotten. I tried to keep the pictures grim, but not too grim. Look at this. Of the people who died of non-natural causes in the world in the last 100 years, look at these numbers. In camps and prisons, of the people that are in camps or prisons, 50% or 50 million out of the 62 million people in jail, it's because they're communists or being controlled by communism. Okay? Genocide. 1/3 of all genocide is performed by the communist governments in the world today. The massacres, this is the massacres line. These are the massacres in the under communism. These are the ones in the world. That includes people like Pol Pot, Stalin, Mao. Deportations, and good half of the people that are leaving their home country are leaving because it's communist. Okay, next one. This is a work camp in Siberia. Stalin killed more people than Hitler by just working them to death because they were not becoming communist fast enough for him. Okay, next one. And they used the people themselves, the workers, to start the revolution. And he called them, and Marx called them, useful idiots. We can use them to change the world, to force that revolution, or evolution, depending on how you use it. Thank you. So, they set up for that change using their flowery words. By the way, that's Lenin, and Lenin was known as a great speaker. He didn't have much to say, but he spoke well. Remind you of anybody? Okay? Does any of it look familiar? I don't know if you watched Glenn Beck today, but he had people who had left communist countries. I prepared this a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. But everything he said was right. It is happening to us right now. And we have to stand up against it. They won't use the language, maybe not the exact language, but it is happening to us right now in the United States. We are in the middle of the Second American Revolution, and we have to stop it, because the revolution we're having is one we don't want to have. Thank you.
be 2 presentations in a night, but I was asked to do an energy policy presentation tonight to talk about some of the things in advance of what Mark's going to talk about, because a lot of them are interrelated. As many of you know, in the last few weeks, last few months, there's been a couple pipelines that have been in the newspaper. One of them in the newspaper and the media, and one of them has been called the Keystone XL pipeline. You guys probably heard that the northern route from the Keystone pipeline, which would be coming from Canada, bringing in oil to America, actually down through Oklahoma and then to Texas, has been vetoed by President Bush until after the election. The southern part, the part that brings oil from Oklahoma to Texas, has been approved. Now, this is just common sense, but I wouldn't think that we'd have a problem right now sending oil from Oklahoma to Texas, one state away across the border. Go ahead, Mike. Because this right here is a picture of our current pipeline system in America. Almost 300,000 miles of pipeline in America. And President Obama's worried about 700 additional miles. Next. These are our interstate and intrastate pipelines. Next. 305,000 miles up there. Now there's also bunches and bunches and bunches of gas pipelines as well. Go ahead, next slide. That slide right there shows all of the pumping stations for natural gas pipelines throughout the country. It also shows a portion of all the natural gas pipelines in the country. And I'm kind of shortening up my presentation because we're running out of time, but go ahead. Now that top section up there, and I know many of you cannot read that, but it says 2/3 of the lower 48 states is dependent on natural gas pipelines. We're getting into natural gas. How many of you have your home heated by natural gas? Half of us, okay? And the bottom one says, today almost every major metropolitan area in the United States is supplied by or is the final destination of one or more of the major interstate pipeline companies or its affiliates. Nearly every metropolitan place within the country, more than about 15,000 people has a gas pipeline coming into it. Go ahead. Those right now are the import and export spots for our country. They're all over the place. Do you think it would hurt to have one more right up there? No. Next. As of 2008, there are 24 spots for imports, 18 for exports, 13 are both imports and exports, and there's 18 locations for liquefied natural gas. You probably remember back about a year ago, there was a proposition to have an LNG facility put into Astoria. They spent $100 million citing that project, and it was never approved. Spent $100 million just to find out they could not build it. Now, I mean, this is just common sense, you know. How many companies want to spend $100 million to find out they can't build something? And how many of them in this economy can even afford to do that? That was bunches and bunches and bunches of high-paying jobs. Go ahead. I'm in the way, aren't I? Now, the Keystone XL pipeline that I talked about initially, that oil from that pipeline is going to go somewhere. Okay? Canada proposes, or is estimated, they will lose $72 billion if they build that pipeline into America. The reason is because China wants that oil too, and they'll pay more for the oil themselves. For them doing us a favor, they lose $72 billion. That's twice as much as that Warren Buffett thing I talked about earlier. Go ahead. Oh, where's my map?
It's here. It's weird.
All of the slides I'm showing you today, these are not right-wing conspiracy slides. They're not from some think tank. They're from what's called the EIA. That is the Energy and Information Administration. It's the federal government. Do you guys realize the federal government has maps that tell us where the top 100 oil fields are in America? Go ahead.
There's a map here too, by the way.
And they have them for every year. And they do exploration, and they tell us where they're going to be next. Go ahead. Now here is another map from them. Here's that little country to the north of us, okay? And you may not be able to read up there, but it says Canada is the number 2 largest oil producing country in the world, or reserves. 178 billion barrels of oil in Canada. Number 2 in the world. Now, Tom of Common Sense says, maybe it would be a good idea if we bought oil from our friends and maybe stopped buying so much from the people that don't like us so much, like Venezuela and half the Middle East. Go ahead. You know, if that slide is correct, why are we not allowed to build a pipeline from the second richest oil country on the planet into our country to supply oil for our industries and our people? I mean, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, does it make sense to any of you why that would be? Well, the reason Obama has the right to say no is because it's an international pipeline and he has final say on international pipelines. Why he couldn't say no on the XL pipeline from Oklahoma to Texas is because it's not international, it's interstate, so he has no say over final siting and approval. Next. World oil production. Russia's number 2. United States is number 3. Go ahead. Here's use per day. 19.8 billion barrels is what we use. Twice as much as what China uses. Next. That's another descriptor, another pictorial of use. And all of this stuff, if you guys want it, I know I'm going through some of this rather quickly. If you want copies of it, like I said, it's all on the website, eia.org. Or eia.gov, I'm sorry. It's government. But you can also have my slideshow if you want it. Go ahead. Now here's an interesting few slides, okay? This is 1985. This is North Dakota and Montana. You may have heard about this because Mark Anderson did a show on this topic, and this is actually the Bakken oil field that you've heard so much about. In 1985, that's what it looked like, right there. Those were all the drilling sites. Go through the next 4 slowly. That's 1990, 95, 2005, 2010. Now, North Dakota right now, do you know what their unemployment rate is? 3%, that's correct. Now, the federal government considers full unemployment anything under 4.5. Because at 3%, you're importing lots and lots of people to fill all those jobs. Because you can't have enough people graduating and getting rid of old jobs to get new ones at that rate. But that's the Bakken oil fields. Go ahead. If these slides are correct, and we have trillions of dollars of natural gas and oil in our country, why are we not allowed to capture any of it? You know, it's trillions of dollars. Trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. Go ahead. There's our top 3 crude oil producing countries, or states. Texas, Louisiana, Alaska, California, and North Dakota. Go ahead. Top producing countries, USSR, United States, Saudi Arabia. And look at our line. Saudi Arabia is going up a little bit, Russia's going up a little bit, Iran's going up a little bit, China's going up a little bit, USSR is going down. But us little Americans are going down. And it's not been just in the last 5 years, last 10 years, it's been since 1983. Go ahead. And you know, we keep hearing that it's because of the pipelines are so dangerous and those spill oil all over the place. But here's a research paper done that says, contrary to popular perception, the number of oil spilled as well as the amount spilled have decreased significantly over the last 2 decades. Since 1970s, it's decreased by 228%. Since the 1980s, it's decreased by 154%. Better technology, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we improve everything we do. You know, the Middle East uses our own technology to pump the oil out of the ground. I mean, so does Venezuela, so does Mexico. The whole entire world uses our technology, our American technology, to pump the oil out of the ground that we have to buy from them. Doesn't make much sense. We can't pump our own use our own technology, pump our own oil out of our own ground. Go ahead. And on top of that, this little group called the Energy Information Agency, they also have nice little color maps like this one that shows all of the shale deposits in the whole country. The Bakken one we just talked about is right here. Look what we have over here. Compared to the Bakken, how much times bigger is that? 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times bigger? Plus look at this one here and that one there and all those others. I mean, the government knows where our oil's at. Industry knows where it's at. Why can't we get any of it? Why are we not allowed to drill? Why are we not allowed to use our own American technology to produce jobs for this country?
Because he doesn't want us to prosper. He wants us to be brought down and the rest of the world up, not the opposite way around.
That's the answer to the question, that's correct. Go ahead. Next. Let's get that. You know, we hear about these 2 projects all the time, Boardman coal plants and the Klamath dams. It's been proposed to shut the Boardman coal plant down 20 years before its useful life after they spent a whole bunch of millions of dollars upgrading it. They want to propose to take out the Klamath dams. Mark has done 2 shows on that. The guy's going to speak after me on his radio show, icebysalem.com, is that right? Or .org, com. icebysalem.com. Go ahead. Electricity generation. This is probably something you've probably never seen. I mean, this is from the government too. It tells you exactly what percentage of our petroleum and our renewable stuff produces energy, produces electricity. Would you be surprised to know that only 1% of our electricity is produced from petroleum, oil? Less than 10% is renewable. Coal is 45%. Now here's a trick question for you. Which country in the world has the largest coal reserves? The United States does, by a huge margin. We have more than double the coal reserves of the next largest country, which is Russia. Go ahead. Here's just an interesting graph. It kind of shows where the electricity comes from. Oregon is an exporting electricity area because we have dams, hydro, yes. You see where all the energy goes to? Southern California. It goes over to here. Go ahead. Next. Next. Right there's our coal deposits. They know where they're at, but we're not allowed to go get them. Go ahead. According to U.S. Energy Information, 200 years based on current consumption is what we have in this country. 200 years of coal. And that produces 45% of our electricity. Go ahead. An interesting slide here. This one talks about U.S. coal production, 1950 to 2010. You can see a huge increase. Go ahead. There's our global reserves. Go ahead. Next. Now, an interesting fact, ladies and gentlemen. We just saw that our coal production is going up, and we know that it's not being used in our own country because Mr. Obama says our electricity rates will necessarily have to skyrocket. So where's it going? It's going out of our country. It's going to China. It's going to Venezuela. It's going to Brazil. So, common sense Tom says, well, if Brazil and China and Venezuela can use our coal to produce electricity, why can't we? You know, and here's the funny part again. What technology do you think produces all of these electricity plants around the world? U.S. technology. General Electric does a lot of it. But it's our own technology that they're using to produce electricity in all these different countries with our own coal, and we can't do it here. Next. That's the change in 2010 and 2011. Next. Here's an interesting piece. Down at the bottom, you can just go next and I'll just talk about this one. In 2010, last year, there's different kinds of coal. There's coking coal, which is used to produce steel. Last year, China in 2010 used more coking coal than the entire world did in 2001. 2010, China's production of steel was increased or was greater than the entire world's production of steel in 2001. Next slide. And they also have, well, this is a pretty map on the thing. It's a whole bunch of different colors. Okay. They even can tell you where our methane deposits are at. Go ahead. They can tell us where our tight gas is at. I mean, if you go to look at these, they will actually bring up maps, detailed maps that tell you exactly how deep the shale is. I mean, they'll tell you that the shale is 600 feet deep and it's half a mile below the ground. They know where it's all at, but we're not allowed to use any of it. Not allowed to use our own technology, use our own resources. Go ahead. Okay, let's skip through these. Let it go. Keep going. Next. Okay. Almost done. Can we go back one? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Forward. What would happen to energy prices in Northern Oregon if we eliminate the dams in Southern Oregon? That was my answer, thank you. They would necessarily skyrocket, yes. You see, what we need to elect people and we need to have all these guys understand is that all of this stuff is interrelated. The stuff that Mark's going to talk about, it's interrelated to all this. You see, all of it is connected. There is nothing that stands alone these days. Southern Oregon dams affect the electricity rates here. That electricity goes to California. It doesn't necessarily go to us. It's going to go to California. Why? Because California is willing to pay twice as much as we are. Go ahead. What happens if we close the Borden plant? It produces enough electricity, if I understand it correctly, to power almost 1 million homes. Where does that electricity come from if it doesn't come from there? It doesn't come from the sun. Okay? Not windmills either. It's going to come from someplace else. But it's not going to come cheaply. Next. And this is the end right here. I mean, why do you think we are being energy deprived or energy limited? Is it just the thought that we use too much of the world's energy reserve? I mean, that's what we keep hearing. That America uses too much so everybody else can't have enough. I mean, that doesn't make sense. You see, if we're energy limited and we can't produce stuff, we can't produce products. The people change for our products for their dollars or their pesos or whatever they are. We have to be able, when they cut our energy off, when they slow down what we can build and what we can do with our own dollars and our own energy and our own time and our own power and our own technology, it slows down everybody because everything is interrelated. I hope you guys all have a wonderful evening. None of that. But, yes.
I just saw in all these things you showed us that God made this a land of hidden treasures. He knew the energy we would need, and he provided for it long before we were born. It was done before the Constitution was written. You see, from those maps, it's all hidden treasure that was already here before America was founded. Thank you.
You guys have a wonderful evening. If you have any questions about it, I know I've buzzed through this way quick. One question, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment about the dams. We did a homeschool field trip to Bonneville Dam, and all those windmills that they put on the gorge there, the environmentalists were trying to close down Bonneville or shut part of them down. And the guy that did the tour said that they are having to, because the windmills are losing money, they have to pay the people that built the windmills so that they can keep the dam open.
The lady was just made a comment, which is absolutely true, okay? The windmills along the Columbia Gorge and both sides of the gorge have been losing money and have not been able to generate as much power because we've had so much water last little bit. So we actually, as taxpayers, have been paying those windmill companies not to produce energy. After we've subsidized them almost $300 million last couple of years to build those windmills. Have a good night, everyone.
To do what I'm doing right now, there's just a bunch of us, a bunch of us, that saw a need and decided it was time to stand up and do something and be part of the solution. Somewhere in this room yet tonight is another Mark Anderson. Somewhere in this room there's another Tom Stutzman. Somewhere in this room there's another Fritz Souls or Lane Solberg.
Cease. 2 years. Cease.
Cease. Well, everyone messes my name up, so I picked him. But so Mark's one of those unlikely people, and he's just done a tremendous job in informing us, logic, sharing from his heart, bringing on speakers who have all sorts of great information for us. Please take the information for yourself. Please be willing to share the information with your neighbors, friends, family. We have to get the word out about what's going on in this country and encourage people to vote the right way. We get the country if we vote, if we get enough people to the voting polls that vote the right way. It's simply the way it works. We may not always get the candidates that we want in front of us, but if we don't vote, we could definitely get the candidates we don't want. Okay? So please be willing to talk to 1 or 2 people this month. Take some of the information that you learned tonight and share it. And be willing to step up to the plate a little bit somewhere. You might be that next Tom or Mark or Fritz or any one of these people on the steering committee and people associated with our organization that just do a tremendous job in sounding the alarm. So, Mark, please come talk to us.
That's Dr. Mark.
Well, not doctor yet. I did actually get accepted to, is this on? Is it now? Okay, whoa, there it is. Yeah, I did actually get accepted to my doctorate program over at George Fox University. So I'm starting that. I'm starting that actually at the end of this month, and what's being passed around is some papers. I've got an article in that. It's about the Klamath Dam issue, and we scored a victory down there. And it's on page 10, I think. Larry, is the cable long enough to reach over here? Anyways, you want to take a look at that real quick while we get set up. Northwest Connections is a great little magazine published out of the Portland area. They're trying to expand down here, and I'm sure that they love subscriptions. But it's all conservative, as you can see, the Northwest Connection newspaper is. I was sitting on the hall there, and you could hear all of Tom's presentation, but he's talking about oil and energy, and that's actually what our show's on tomorrow. We talked with Dr. Daniel Fine about the oil industry and the role that speculators have. Fascinating show. I hope you get a chance to hear that. But of course, I'm here tonight to talk about Agenda 21. You know, there's really no way that I can talk about Agenda 21 and tell you everything there is to know about it in one night. So my goal tonight is really to talk more about the foundations of it and the philosophy that's behind it. Because I think if you can understand the philosophy, you'll understand why it is so important to fight this. Really, it would take hours and hours to do an in-depth presentation on Agenda 21, and there are plenty of people out there that are actually far more qualified to do an in-depth presentation on Agenda 21 than I am. Some people are actually making a living on it now. Tom DeWeese is one such person who's been touring the country talking about Agenda 21. And he was actually one of our first guests that we had on iSpy radio show talking about Agenda 21. And but the reason it would take hours and hours is because it is something that has taken years and years to develop, and it really has grown out of decades, if not centuries, of efforts to bring it to fruition. And but I can't teach you everything that you need to know about Agenda 21 in 4 simple words. Agenda 21 is bad. Thank you. That's all you need to know. You've got a great audience. Anyway, Agenda 21 is not only bad, quite frankly, I think it's kind of, there's an element of evilness about it. And you'll kind of hear that as I go throughout this. I'm not saying that people that are advocating it are evil per se. In fact, I think there's a lot of very well-meaning people that are behind Agenda 21 and sustainability and all the rest. Some of them very good Christians that thinking that they're doing God's work. But when you really examine the philosophy behind it, like I say, that's the foundation, and that's why it's so important to understand that and so important to fight that. And I'm also not saying either that your representatives or senators or city councilors or county commissioners are evil, nor are they necessarily communists. Some of them may be. But don't go in there thinking that just because somebody is talking about sustainability, that number one, they know what they're talking about, or that they even realize that it has anything to do with Agenda 21. And that's an important thing when you're communicating with people. I think a lot of people hear Agenda 21 and they immediately jump to conspiracy theories on both sides. People that on our side sometimes think that it's conspiracy theory, and on the other side, when they hear it, they think we're coming up with some kind of conspiracy. So keep that in mind when you talk to people, especially your representatives, and that's who we're really going to need to target in order to combat this. So, whoops, lost my slide. So for tonight, whenever I think of Agenda 21, there's always a quote from Sun Tzu that comes to mind. And it is simply this: all warfare is based on deception. And he wrote that back 500 years before the birth of Christ. And I just want you to keep that in mind as I go throughout this presentation. And the other thing is that Agenda 21 is real. It's not something that they hide. And in fact, the first time I heard about it, I was thinking it was conspiracy theory. Somebody actually, I just started the radio show, and one of the listeners said, "Hey, what do you know about Agenda 21?" And I had kind of heard about it, but I really didn't know anything at all about it. But as I started to dig into it, I realized this is very real. And so one of the first things I did actually is I actually went to the UN's website. And this is not their opening splash page. You go to this one, it's real fancy, and you got to click which language you want and all that, because they are the UN, you know. And so right up here, you can see this. Right up in here, there's a little search box, and you just go there and type in Agenda 21, and make sure you put the quotes on it, so it's not looking for documents that return agenda and another one that has 21. So putting it in quotes returns the phrase Agenda 21. And the very first time I did that, which was about 11 months or so ago, it returned 5,000 documents. So they're not hiding this. This is not something that they're ashamed of or anything like that. But now when you click on it, and I just did this morning, you probably can't see that, but right here, this is 11 months later, 8,110 documents are now on that site dealing with Agenda 21. So, like I said, they don't hide it, and but the thing is, they do want to kind of soften the blow, so to speak, and this is actually from their own documents. The United Nations purposely recommends avoiding the term Agenda 21 and suggests a cleverly named alternative, smart growth. And this is from the United Nations Millennium Papers, issue 2, page 5. And of this, and of Agenda 21 and smart growth, it reads, participating in a UN-advocated planning process would very likely bring out many of the conspiracy-fixated groups and individuals in our society, such as the National Rifle Association, citizen militias, and some members of Congress, and members of 9/12, I might add. This segment of our society would fear a one-world government and a UN invasion of the United States, through which our individual freedom would be stripped away, would actively work to defeat any elected official who joined the conspiracy by undertaking Agenda 21. So we will call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth. This is their words. And like I said, it's page 5 of their United Nations Millennium Papers. So I'd like to kind of dig into, whoops, sorry about that. Let's try that again. So I'd like to talk about the roots of Agenda 21, and it really stems mainly from socialism, but it actually kind of goes, that's really at its core, that's what Agenda 21 is. It's a socialist program. But it actually goes back much further, back to population theories, or should I say overpopulation theories. In particular, one of the more well-known of these is Thomas Malthus, writing back in 1798, and I forget the actual title of his work, but basically it entailed he assumed that if the population grew too much, it would force a return to subsistence living, subsistence level conditions once population growth had outpaced agricultural production. In other words, the earth could not sustain such high levels of population. And his exact phrase here is, the power of population is indefinitely greater than the power of the earth to produce subsistence for man. Which is kind of amazing, because Thomas Malthus was a pastor. And so what he's saying there basically is that God created a flawed earth that couldn't sustain his own creation, mankind. So his work was actually very influential with a lot of evolutionary biologists. In particular, Charles Darwin was heavily influenced by his work. And in a nutshell, it basically sees population growth as negative. It has a negative impact on the environment. And this will show up later in arguments. We see it in our own time, the 19th century into the 20th century, with the abortion theories of Margaret Sanger, that they wanted to control the population, and there was also race involved with that too. But you can start to see how some of these dots are starting to connect. And then, would somebody mind grabbing me some water? Oh, thank you.
Just step outside.
Yeah. Well, there's always one in every crowd. So anyway, more recently, where Agenda 21 directly grew out of was through the Club of Rome, which formed in 1968. And the Club of Rome first garnered public attention with its 1972 report, The Limits to Growth. Thank you. With its 1972 report, The Limits to Growth, which went on to become the best-selling environmentalist book of all time. And again, Agenda 21, environmentalist, population, you can see how these are all starting to tie in. The main thesis of that book is that economic growth cannot continue indefinitely because of the limited availability of natural resources, and chief among these, of course, is oil. Great lead into this. So in 1987, the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development issued a report called Our Common Future, and this is the foundation for Agenda 21. It was written by a guy by the name of Gro Harlem Brundtland, who was the vice president of the World Socialist Party. So you can kind of tell where this is going to end up. And after 5 years of further planning in 1992, Agenda 21 was officially launched at the UN's Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. And the report, and remember, this is authored by a socialist, and a new document called UN Sustainable Development Agenda 21, and is now just referred to in shorthand by Agenda 21. A year later, in 1993, the Club of Rome, in their book, The First Global Revolution, said, and this is a direct quote again, "The common enemy of humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. Democracy is no longer well suited for the tasks ahead." Club of Rome, First Global Revolution, 1993. So Agenda 21 really is a comprehensive blueprint for action, and that's really what it is. It's the foundation for all of these other programs. And it is a massive, like I said, it's comprehensive, and it's designed to function globally, nationally, and even down on the local level. And Agenda 21's idea of sustainability is based on the belief, like I said, that the world is running out of resources. Mankind is bad. We have to save the earth. It's about controlling resources at its most fundamental level, natural resources. And as I said, its author wasn't a socialist, and so it is also really calling for the removal of private property rights, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. In fact, private property under Agenda 21 is in fact seen as social injustice, allowing some to create wealth where others cannot. And it has also since spawned thousands, literally thousands, probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of more groups, various entities, non-profit groups that make their living off of this, and governmental agencies, public-private partnerships, and my favorite, non-governmental organizations, which are unelected bodies but have the authority of government. It is also about billions of dollars. If you're here for my presentation in January talking about the green energy movement, there are literally hundreds of billions of dollars at stake on this, and all of it ties back into the foundation of Agenda 21 because we're running out of resources, because the world has to, because the earth can't sustain population, and there's not ever going to be enough oil. It all ties back into this. And global warming, sustainability, green energy, they're all just part of this. And really, out of all of this, as I said, there's thousands of groups, and there's thousands of programs, hundreds of billions of dollars. This is just one of them. This is HUD. They're actually trying to get people to reinstate a $100 million project. This is one project from one agency, $100 million. Unfortunately, the Republicans in the House kind of blocked this because in 2012 they pulled the funding for this. And so now what they're doing is they're out there advocating people to say we need to reinstate these grants. And $100 million, and it's unfortunate you can't see that map a little bit more, but those are all the little pinpricks that have been developed out of this one project. So as I said, it's about socialism, and socialism, as far as I'm concerned, is really about money. It's about controlling people and about money, and anyone that doesn't think that it's really at its heart about money, well, the proof of, and not about the little guy, the proof of that is that when is the last time any socialist leader gave up their multi-million-dollar mansion and gave it to a homeless guy? It's not about the little guy. It's not about equality. It is about power. It is about money. It is about control. There's an interesting economics article, actually. It was making its rounds on Facebook. I think Steve Buckstein was the one that first put me onto it. And it's called The Man Who Told the Truth. And it's an article about Robert Heilbroner, who is the best-selling writer of economics of all time and probably has sold more books than all other economists combined. In fact, one book alone, The Worldly Philosopher, sold over 4 million copies. And he's also an outspoken and avowed socialist. This is an economist, the guy that helped, one of the many guys that influences all the other economists to help shape our own economy. And here's some quotes from his book. Socialism must depend for its economic direction on some form of planning, Agenda 21, and for its culture on some form of commitment to the idea of a morally conscious collectivity, that higher ideal. Because remember, socialists don't believe in God, so they have to have that higher ideal that people can get behind. If tradition cannot, and the market system should not, underpin the socialist order, we are left with some form of command as the necessary means for securing its continuance and adaptation. Indeed, that is what planning means. The factories and stores and farms and shops of a socialist socio-economic formation must be coordinated, and this coordination must entail obedience to a central plan. This is an economist writing before Agenda 21 was ever developed. The rights of individuals are directly opposed to the basic social commitment to a deliberately embraced collective moral goal. Under socialism, every dissenting voice, like maybe 9/12ers, under socialism, every dissenting voice raises a threat similar to that raised under a democracy by those who preach anti-democracy. You're a threat. How do you like that? And there it is, Agenda 21 in a nutshell, trading our rights and our liberties for the good of economic planning, for the greater good. In his 1974 book, this is the same economist, a book titled An Inquiry into the Human Prospect, he wrote, ultimately there's an and this is where I think the dots really start connecting, ultimately there's an absolute limit to the ability of the earth to support or tolerate the process of industrial activity, and there is reason to believe that we are now moving toward that limit very rapidly. So you can really see all these connections and how they all tie, and you've got the socialism on the one level, it ties, and they have been building this for years, and it all has culminated in Agenda 21. And the interesting thing is, he wrote that in 1974. And remember, he said that we are moving rapidly towards that limit. Well, there was 4 billion, just over 4 billion people in 1974. There's 7 billion of us now. So I guess we haven't quite reached that yet. And the thing is, I think what this really comes down to, there is such a limited view on the left and the socialists of how big this world really is. You could take an area of land, and I figured this out one time. If you built everybody a 2,500 square foot house, gave them a 1,000 square foot yard, and of course, you wouldn't have any streets or anything, so it's just a matter of how many houses you can fit in an area. And if you figure, and if you put, I think the actual number was something like 3.5, or maybe it was 4.5 persons per house, you could fit everybody in the world into an area of land the size of Texas, and have enough left over to build more houses for 200 million more people. The earth is huge. It is huge, it is vast, and we understand so very little of it. Tom's talking about oil today, and well, let me come back to that. Because I really think what this boils down to, it's a matter of faith. Do you believe in God, or do you believe in mankind? And the thing is, the people on the left don't even seem to believe in mankind. They see mankind as a scourge on the earth. We're not, somehow, we've managed to evolve on this earth, and yet we're not part of that ecosystem. Or if we are, there's supposed to be such a limited amount of us. And like I said, we don't really know how the earth works. For example, in 1944, the proven reserves of oil at the time were 20 billion barrels, the proven reserves. Here we are almost 70 years later, and those proven reserves of 20 billion have actually produced 170 billion barrels of oil. And yet the proven reserves are still only considered 20 billion barrels of oil. As I said, we talked about our, tomorrow, our show on iSpy Radio is a lot about oil, and we talk a lot about some of the new technologies on this, and it has, the fracking has really been a game changer. It has opened up vast fields of oil and gas, and in fact, I'm giving away a little bit of it tomorrow, but the fracking just in gas has opened up such huge fields of natural gas that in the western Pennsylvania, western New York, which is where I used to live, and western West Virginia areas, just up through that one area, I think it's like 490 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. We now have enough natural gas to take us 122 years into the future, if I'm remembering all that right. As I said, we don't really understand how the earth works. In fact, I was just reading in preparation for that show a really interesting article. I'd never heard of it before, but there's a new theory. It's not new, actually. It's been around for about 20 or 30 years. And Tom, I don't know if you touched on it or not, but the abiotic deep earth theory of oil production. Did you get into that at all? What it is basically is that, the standard belief is that oil was basically created by decaying dinosaurs and the other fauna from back during all of these different eras. Well, the Earth, as far as I can see it, and I'm no scientist, but I'll pretend I am one for the moment, because it never stopped anyone from, pretending they were on the other side, so why shouldn't I do it? But the way that the Earth works, of course, is we all know about plate tectonics, where the plates are constantly slipping. Well, if that's happening, you're having the stuff on the bottom of the ocean and whatnot constantly slipping down below, and it's eventually going to hit that magnet core, and it's almost like it's constantly recycling and renewing itself. So if you look at it from that theory, this abiotic deep earth theory, what that talks about is that it's not based on decaying fauna and dinosaurs and stuff. Saudi Arabia isn't rich in oil because there just happen to be a lot of dinosaurs that died there. Instead, what it is, it has to do with plate tectonics. And the plates have shifted and such that it's broken up the bottom layers of the bedrock and whatnot, and in order to allow more oil to escape from down below. And it's things like that because we keep finding new fields of oil. We keep saying we're running out of oil, and yet we keep finding more of it. And it just makes sense to me that God wouldn't create a planet that isn't sustainable. How do you say that? I'm getting some maybe or yes or no from Larry, not, but I don't care because I'm up here talking and you're not. You're developing your own theory. But anyway, the abiotic deep Earth theory, what's that? I know it is, yeah, I know the Russians really favor it, but there's a lot of Americans that are starting to buy into it too. But anyway, the abiotic Earth theory is not my theory, but and I'm definitely not qualified to talk about it too much. But it just goes to show that I think there's a lot more to the Earth than what the left gives it credit for. And like I say, it does come down to a matter of faith. So, what to do about all of this? As I said, Agenda 21 is all about money. It really is. Socialism is about money. It's about control. But money is also the key to stopping it. And the idea is we have to start fighting back. I mean, you know, we hear this all the time about fighting back. But what does that mean, really? It means not being silent. We used to have a T-shirt around here that says "Silent No More," and I think that is still so appropriate. We cannot be silent anymore. I think we need to start demanding that they stop funding sustainability projects. One project alone through the UN, out of their latest Green Earth Summit or whatever it was there in Durban, they called for a $100 billion Green Earth project, green energy, something like that. And it's a $100 billion green project that all of the nations of the world, the developed nations of the world, you know, because it gets back to wealth redistribution, all of the developed nations of the world are going to chip into this $100 billion fund. Well, there are 172 nations on the earth, I think, and there was 130 of them that don't have that level of GDP. I don't mean combined, I mean each one of them don't have, and that's more wealth than 130 of these countries. $100 billion that we're going to be chipping into, and again, that's just one program. So we need to start demanding that they stop funding these sustainability projects. I think we need to also start writing. When you see, in fact, as far as I know, Marion County Commissioners are still considering getting involved with ICLEI, which is the local level of Agenda 21. Does anybody know if that's still correct? Are they still considering that? Sir?
I called them today and they acted, they said they didn't even know what that meant.
Okay.
So I'm going to follow up. They
Okay.
said that it wasn't on their agenda.
Good. I hope that's correct because these are three otherwise sane Republicans as far as I've been able to tell. And they ought to know better. But again, we can't be silent anymore. When you see somebody, when your representative, TomScottTractorVote.org, you know, when you see somebody start talking about sustainability and stuff, say, you know what, I'm not in favor of that. It doesn't, you don't, I think people get intimidated by writing to their congressman. You know, for heaven's sake, they all have email now. And it doesn't take a long-winded letter with a whole bunch of supporting documents and everything else. Just say, I'm not in favor of these sustainability projects. With the economy the way it is, we need to stop this kind of spending. Same thing with all these environmental things. It's kind of funny that the left is always preaching environmental things, and yet and they want us to stay out of it, and yet they won't leave it alone. You know, can the earth take care of itself or not? And they're shutting us out of our own wilderness areas and our own national forest. So I think it's time we stop all these environmental programs. And I have this saying that, you know, I've said this on the radio before, but it's fun and I enjoy it anyway. But, you know, everybody knows It's a Wonderful Life, and every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. Well, every time you fund an environmental project, a liberal Democrat gets reelected. So the other thing is, too, is get informed. That is, I think, really the key here. And it just so happens that there's a radio station, or a radio show, that has a lot of really good information. Just happen to have a lot of good shows about Agenda 21. We've done 4 shows on this in particular, and we're due for another one. But you can actually go to this real simply, and this is our opening page, and just up there in the gray, right up there is the past shows tab, and that's got all of our past shows. They're all available for free download, no charge whatsoever. Although, if I could interrupt this for a second. See these ads over here? Yeah. Whenever you're on a conservative page that you want to support, click their ads, including mine. Click mine a couple hundred times, that'd be great. But every time you click an ad on a conservative page, you're actually helping them earn a little bit of money. They get paid anywhere from 50 cents to $1, sometimes, as much, depending on the popularity of the site, as much as $5 a click. Drudge Report, if you want to support them, every time you're on there, click one of his ads. Every time you're on, I don't think we have ads yet on the 912 Salem project page, but there are plenty of conservative pages out there. If you're on there, if you're on a page that you would want to support, click an ad. It's that simple. There's like 100 some people here today, each one of you, that'll be $100 tomorrow if you just click one of my ads. And actually, each page had, well, the first 2 pages have ads, so you can click both of them. But anyway, go to the past shows tab, and it's a long scrolling list. It's easier if you just do a search for Agenda 21. And I've got 4 shows in particular up there. The very first one is very informative, Agenda 21 with Tom DeWeese. He's a national speaker now. Show 23 was fighting back about ICLEI. That was about a county down in South Carolina that kind of got involved with ICLEI, signed an agreement, didn't really understand what it was, and then it was actually a local group like a 912 or AFP that said, what are you guys doing? And they brought in one of these county commissioners, showed them the documentation of what Agenda 21 and ICLEI was all about, and they booted them out. So you can have an effect if you get involved. And it's again about people like us getting informed about these kinds of things and starting to speak up. You can have an effect. And show 25 was a land grab with Karen Bud Phelan. She's a fantastic attorney, used to work back in the Reagan administration. And she talks a lot about the land grabs that are going on through Agenda 21 and some of these sustainability projects that they're snatching up land. Another fascinating show. And then show 35 was actually, we had brought Tom DeWeese and Karen Bud Phelan out for the Basic American Rights series. This was back in September. And they actually had a legislative luncheon where they both did presentations to some of our legislators. So they got the information and they know about it. Some of them do anyway. The Democrats, there wasn't a single one of them in the room that I remember seeing. But there was about 10 to 15 of them there, and there was actually about 30, I think, by the time everybody kind of came in and out the door. But, and even if some couldn't make it, they sent their staffers, which was pretty cool. So the other thing is to, and there's plenty of other resources. I didn't mean to turn this into a big pitch for the Oxford Radio Show, but it just happened to be. I kind of lucked out that way. There's one person here locally that I would highly recommend. If you're part of a civics organization like Kiwanis, Lions Club, any one of those, even with members of Chamber of Commerce, there's a guy by the name of Robert Howell, who actually gave me a lot of information too, and I meant to bring his information. Unfortunately, I don't have it. I'll put a link up to it on our site. And he's actually going around now to various civic organizations or 912 AFP, whatever, and he's willing to do free presentations. Maybe you can cover his gas or something like that. He's more than willing to do this. It's somebody, he's retired, he just feels it's his duty to get people involved and help people understand what this is all about. So I would highly encourage you, if you're a part of one of those organizations, we've got to start spreading the word on this. People don't understand what sustainability really is all about. And then finally, there's just one little thing that I'd like to talk about, and iSpy Radio has actually kind of shifted our position a little bit. We're not just reporting about this now we're actively getting involved. And if you heard our show 2 weeks ago, we talked to Dr. Bob Zyback, and in that discussion we were talking about 4,000 miles of roads that were being closed over in our national forest, the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest. They're closing down 4,000 miles of roads. And you can imagine how well this is going to work next time a fire breaks out. But it's being closed off to people who use it for, they go up there and cut firewood, they go up there to do gold mining or fishing or camping, recreation, any number of reasons people use those roads. Mushrooming is another big one. And they've just decided they're going to close human beings out of that forest because remember, we're not part of the ecosystem. But it's time to fight back. There's been a petition that's been filed. I think there's already 6,000 signatures on it, but a petition is not enough. And this is where it's really been helpful to have someone like Karen Bud Phelan on our side. So we're actually hiring Karen to file a legal appeal to stop that nonsense. And it's going to be filed on our production company, Grip Productions Northwest. And I'm just tired of the earth good, people bad mentality. And it's time we stand up. And so we're going to actually file that legal appeal to stop that. It does have to be filed by April 30th, and there's actually some ways that you guys can get involved. The first thing that's really critical is getting letters and emails from people that just talk about how important it is to keep those roads open, what it means to them, and why you're opposed to it. I mean, if you use any national road in any national forest, it doesn't have to be that one in particular, But just, if you're somebody that likes having access to forest, or if you just think it's nonsense that they're shutting this down, send us a letter. And I'll put all this up on our website. You can email it to me. You can, there'll be links up on that for any of that. But we've also used some financial help. We are not one of these organizations that gets hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to then turn around and sue the government. This is all coming out of private funds. And like I said, we spent the last year reporting the nonsense, and it's just time to stop this. This is also just a bigger issue than one small corner in Oregon. This is going on all over the United States. We're seeing it with riparian issues. Natural resources are part of Agenda 21's plan to lock those up and take those away from our control. Because remember, we have to subvert our rights to the greater good. Well, these are our lands. These are our natural resources. The person that the entity that controls the natural resources controls the wealth of any nation. And that's what this is about, and it's time to stop this. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the time, and I'm happy to take some questions. And like I said, I'm no expert on Agenda 21, but I'll do what I can. Sir?
Question, Runner. I first heard about Agenda 21.
Just a minute. They're going to get your microphone.
Thank you. When I first heard about Agenda 21, it was really what I heard about was the grassroots part of it, very similar to our different organizations we have, on the basis that it started out in one way at the level of the cities. And I remember not exactly the year, but they invited a whole group of mayors to go to Copenhagen, and they were introduced to this Agenda 21, so to speak. And so consequently, some of the cities have signed up to it. I don't know if Salem has signed up to it. Consequently, what you watch is what is, for example, with the city councils and that, what's being passed and why is it being passed, especially changing the various things that we're doing in the city. More bike paths, more whatever, more condensing the population. This, I'm not sure if it has earmarks of that or not.
Agenda 21, even though it's that kind of think globally, act locally thing, that's really what it boils down to. And that's where they are so effective, really, with implementing this. Because think of your local mayor or your city councilman, a lot of them aren't even being paid to do those jobs. And yet they've got all of these rules and regulations that they have to implement, and some of it is actually state mandated or even nationally mandated, that they have to have sustainability plans. Well, so they're tasked to do this, and they're overworked. This isn't even a full-time job. They're supposed to come up with all these plans, and they may not even have an actual city planner. I know Salem, where I live, they don't even have a full-time city planner. They actually have to hire one through the Council of Governments. And so in through the door comes somebody from Akeley saying, gosh, we've got all these sustainability plans. We're willing to do this for you. Oh, and here's a $1 million grant to help you implement it. What is that city councilor going to do? Gee, you just gave me, you just did all my work for me, and you're walking in with a $1 million grant to implement this. That's where they're really insidious. That's how that $100 billion gets spent. It's collected globally, spent locally.
Hi, thanks, Mark. I'm pretty heavily involved with the fighting urban renewal in my city. I live in Albany. The gentleman over here asked about Ickley. He said something about asking his city about Ickley. They don't use that name so much anymore.
That's right.
They use ICMA now, the International Community / City Management Association. It's an offshoot of Ickley. If you go to Ickley's site and type in ICMA, you'll find a reference to them, it's all on the Ickley site. If you go to the EPA site, Ickley is on the EPA site. They partner with the EPA. It's amazing how far ingrained these things have gotten. Anyway, I just wanted to let him know that it might be called ICMA rather than ICMA.
Yeah, it's the same monster, just a different name. But somebody, I think, asked too, how many cities, I think they were asking if Salem was involved. I don't think they're involved yet. The last I knew, there was like 11 cities, or maybe it's 14 cities right here in Oregon that have already signed on to it.
Actually, you've been talking about the sustainability. Do you know much about the Agenda 21 program with education? Because as far as the local homeschoolers, we're really upset about some of the Agenda 21 stuff being connected with UN because like we're watching like in Germany and a lot of other UN European Union areas. Germany, it's illegal to homeschool, and if you do, they will take your children away.
Wow.
They, people try to do it under the cover, and they will have truant officers, your neighbors turn you in, and they'll have truant officers come in, and they tell you, you know, and I'm kind of upset about that because I got into genealogy and, you know, I'm German, so, you know, you go back to Nazi Germany,
Yeah.
They had the youth days where the parents that, you know, wanted to take their kids to church, they weren't allowed to because youth day was on Sunday and it was a requirement. You had to go to Nazi youth group and you had to go, and if you didn't, your children were taken away. You got 3 chances, and that's exactly what the homeschooling is. You get 3 chances, and they call it child abuse, and they put the kids in an institution and have them with psychologists trying to deprogram what their parents have done to them.
Amazing. It's amazing how the more things change, the more they stay the same. I mean, that just sounds, like you said, it just sounds like something right out of Nazi Germany. There's a question up front here too.
You were talking about access to the forest land, and I heard that it's so insidious that they can't even bring an ambulance in if someone is accidentally shot in the forest or falls out of a tree and breaks their leg. They can't bring an ambulance to that person. They have to hand carry him out.
Questions, please.
Yeah, I don't know really much about that, but just one more comment on the forest issue. There's a lot of rumors and stuff that are out there, and actually what we found that some of these rumors are actually being perpetuated by the forestry department itself. And they're saying that as we're filing this appeal, we're finding out they're just flat out lying about things. And it is really a concerted effort to close those roads, and they don't want the public input. They're telling people in the Eastern Oregon that are very close to this that you can't file an appeal because you don't actually have standing, and that's just flat out not true. So anyway, there's a lot of bad information out there. I don't know about the roads. It wouldn't. I mean, again, if they close the roads, how would they get to them? So another question there.
Yes, I subscribe to the Tom DeWeese reports for about the last year, and one of the back issues, it mentioned Clackamas County as being, I think it was the number 3 worst counties or areas in the United States for Agenda 21. Do you know anything about that? Or have you heard about
I
that?
don't really know anything about it, but given how the county commissioners are out there, it would not surprise me at all. The Clackamas County is actually one of the signatories of ICLEI. That was kind of a surprise to me. But yeah, they are actually on board with it. And there's a movement right now to get some of those commissioners out of office.
My cousin, he's a property owner up in Clackamas County, owns several acres up there, and it took him 5 years to get a building permit to build on his own property.
Yeah.
Every time he turned around, they threw a roadblock at him, he finally had to get an attorney to go to bat to get a building permit on his own property.
And then they wonder why the economy's bad and people aren't building anything. Any other questions? Oh, okay.
We talked about they did this and they did that, and I know what's going on all around. Where's the head of the snake in Salem, Marion County, in Oregon? Can you tell us?
I don't think there's a head of the snake. I think it's like a hydra. There's like hundreds of them. I don't know any one particular person that's really pushing this, but actually next week we're going to have Trevor Loudon here, and I think he's going to specifically talk about some of the things that are going on here in Marion County. It would not surprise me that there's I know that sustainability is pretty big right here. I know the city of Salem is doing that. Salem Chamber of Commerce just helped co-sponsor a big sustainability thing. Actually, some people actually went in and talked with Jason Brandt, the Chamber of Commerce, and I think they made some headway with him. So again, it comes down to speaking up about this. I don't know of any one particular head, but we just need to be aware of all of them.
Two last questions.
I have relatives in Sweden, and talking about homeschooling. Anti-homeschooling, I think, is going throughout Europe. For example, in Sweden, you no longer can use the excuse that you want to teach homeschooling because you want to teach your children religion. So that is out. If you teach them religion, they will re-indoctrinate you.
And again, these are all socialist-based countries. So you can really see how those philosophies start intermingling, because you can't, it gets back to that one quote that I read from The Economist, you can't have people speaking out, because that's as bad as speaking out against democracy here.
People were asking about where is it in our county, in our city. It's deep. And an elected official told me this past week, in the past month, that their planning commission is deep into it. The Agenda 21, they're even using those terms. And here's my suggestion, and that is we don't hire the committees at the schools or the county or the city. We hire the county commissioners, we hire the city councilmen and the school board members. And we need to ask them to cut their budgets, the planning commission's budgets, in those words. And another thing, there is a devil in our government, lots of them, and it is these associations. You can tell where ODOT's been to, and they mess up all the roads, and they go and they learn this stuff and bring it home. And my answer is, and I think it's reasonable, we tell these people, like it used to be, pay your own dues, pay your own expenses, and deduct it from your taxes. Don't use our money. We need, other things. But the Planning Commission in Salem is deep into Agenda 21,
Yeah.
and an elected official told me that.
Yeah, any planning commission right now, I think, is going to be involved in Agenda 21, whether they advocate for it or not. They have mandates that they have to enact, but also a lot of this it's just part of the course right now on any of these planning commissions.
What's the mandate?
Some of it's from the state, some of it's from federal. I think the state of Oregon actually has a sustainability mandate that has to be enacted locally. Each city, I think, is now required to have a sustainability plan. And again, it comes down to the money. That is the easiest, fastest way to cut this off. We are literally talking of tens of thousands of groups and organizations out there. The way to stop it is to cut off their funding. They cannot operate and spend hours and hours and hours doing these plans and commissions and writing and marketing and everything else if they don't have money. And it's our money, it's our tax-funded money that is paying these. That's the way to cut it off, is to stop it at the funding level, and that's the fastest way to do it.
You've asked us to fight, but I look across this group of fine people here, and how many blacks are here? How many Hispanics? How many of you, raise your hand, are under 20 years old? A couple kids down there.
I'm
We're
black.
all going to be on oxygen.
Hey, wait a minute. I'm black. I'm Hispanic. My mom was a damn fine sporting woman.
And how many of you are there? One person, okay? What's the basis of the army that's going to fight this?
Yeah.
Us guys are little pink Boys and Girls Club here tonight, according to Farrakhan and Obama. What's the army that's going to fight this?
Yeah, and it's training the next generation. It really is. Yeah, we better hurry. You're absolutely right. But it's talking about it's talking to your kids, it's talking to your grandkids, and again, it comes down to funding. They can't do these things. There's a huge movement right now in every school to be talking about sustainability, global warming, and everything else. We know that, but they can't be doing that if they don't have the funds to start developing those programs. And I think it's going to come down to people like us speaking up. Another simple thing that you can do is contact all of these the private companies, Coke, Home Depot, all these ones that have their sustainability stuff. Start writing to them and say, you know what, your crap about marketing your sustainability stuff or how green you are, that doesn't cut it for me. In fact, I'm turned off by it because I don't think you understand what that really means. If you just start speaking up, the more that all of us start speaking up about the nonsense that the environmental movement has become, that starts the way. And it starts talking, contact your local school boards too. I'm not in favor of this kind of stuff being taught to my kids and my grandkids.
Okay,
And vote,
everyone.
that's right. Voting is the biggest thing.
It's after 8:30, we've got to wrap up. Please take treats, please give Mark a great hand for the sixth grade. Don't forget about 7 next Thursday night.
Thank you very much. Please don't forget to click,
And,
click the ads.
And please clean out the cookies and snacks. There's no one on the steering committee that needs to eat more cookies.